Hi friends and adventurers, Heather from Heather's Hikes and Adventures. I'm sharing 20 safety essentials. That includes must-have safety items or gear, safety tips or tricks to do when you go out into the world, especially if you go out solo into the world. So let's dive right in because 20 is a lot. You're going to want to make sure you stay all the way to the end because you don't want to miss any of them. I'm hoping this Florida rainstorm is not too loud or distracting. It's in a lull at the moment, so I figured I might as well hurry up and try to get through this list before it starts to pour. Second thought, maybe I'll BRB after the rain slows down a bit so you can hear me. Change of plans. We're just going to be in the garage without the AC running because I don't want to run the engine in here even with the garage door open. That seems like a recipe for disaster, although it will come up in today's safety topic, ironically. All right, come on, Heather. There we go. We're just going to block this off so you're not distracted by my garage mess, although it is so much more organized right now. And speaking of organization, make sure you're subscribed because I have a video coming out soon about reorganizing, decluttering, and getting all of my camp stuff in order. So you'll want to see that. Okay, now here we go. 20 safety essentials in no particular order, starting with number 1. I like to call it spidey sense. Some people might call it a heightened awareness. You know, you're tapping into the area, making sure you're, aware of all the energy and all the potential threats and, any, just being aware of potential dangers or threats. So that's honestly going to be always your number one defense, which is probably why in every single one of these videos you'll hear that mentioned, because it is so true. In fact, if you have not already read The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, I highly recommend that. I will link that, or I'll include that information below, and I'll put a link for it. That book is amazing at teaching you how to kind of filter out what the useless fear is and the paying attention to your gut instinct part. So, highly recommend. But let's move on to the second thing. You're going to want a safety net. Let me explain. Whether it's one person that you trust, a buddy system, a group chat, you're going to want to have at least one or preferably two trusted individuals that are always going to know your general itinerary, where you're going to be when you expect to be back, around what time you should be checking in. That way, if you ever do miss a check-in, or if you're not where you say you're going to be by the time you're going to be there, they know to kind of check in with you if they can't get a hold of you. Maybe they need to send reinforcements, check in with others. You want somebody to be aware of where you're going and when you should be back. Now, this may be a good time to mention that I am just going to be discussing the things that work for me and that I consider safety essentials that I will never fail to do or never fail to leave and go out into the world without. These may not be for everybody, so if any of these are not for you, I totally understand. But with that in mind, one of the things that I like to do when I'm booking a campsite ahead of time and I'm reserving online is I like to always book as 2 adults. Whether it's just going to be me, whether I'm camping with my daughter, I just book as 2 adults. My thinking on that is not so much like, oh, I'm scared to let anybody know I'm alone. I just kind of don't see the point in advertising in writing in a system somewhere that is not, completely foolproof when it comes to accessing. There's no reason to announce where I'm going to be by myself ahead of time, especially if I'm booking it months from now. So I just always put 2 adults. That way, on paper, it doesn't look like I'm going to be alone. We are now up to essential 4, which is another tip, and I've actually brought it up before, but I think it's so important when it comes to safety, especially if you're on your own, especially if you're in an area you're unfamiliar with, and especially if that area is not guaranteed to have good cell reception or phone service. So that is to always, always, always have a downloaded version of the map, whether you're using Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever map system you use. Maybe you use more than one. Make sure you have your route or general area you're going to be in downloaded ahead of time. That way, even if there's no service, you'll have no problem pulling up navigation later on. By the way, if that's something that you want me to do a demonstration on how to do when I do my video discussing my most recommended apps to use, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure to include a demonstration of how you can download maps offline. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is actually a twofer, because I have 2 different kinds. I keep this one up front with me. This is my newest edition. It's a fire blanket. You just pull these. I'm not going to demonstrate it because I want it to stay all nice and neat and compact. But this just slides right between the seats, so I keep that up here for easy reach. And then I have my trusty fire extinguisher here. You always want to check your expiration date every so often. Make sure you're not walking around with an expired one. But this way, it's right there in my door for easy access in my living space. And I have one up front for easy access up here if I'm in the cabin area. So, highly recommend at least one type of fire extinguisher in your rig, no matter how small it is. Even if you don't think you'll be cooking in here, you just never know. So, fire extinguisher. Which brings me to the next one that is kind of sort of related. And that, my friends, is this baby. Another one you're going to want to check the expiration on so that you don't start to get an annoying beep all the time. But you're going to want a carbon monoxide detector. Actually, it's a good idea to have a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector, especially if you cook inside your rig. I can't talk. Especially if you do a lot of cooking inside your rig. Normally, the only cooking I do is when I have my doors open inside. Otherwise, I'm normally outside at the picnic table. I probably should still have a smoke detector, though. But you definitely want one of these. All right. Warning. No, it doesn't want to do it. Did I do that wrong? There we go. All right, you get the point. Okay, I said okay. All right, I did the test on it. So that's the noise you'll hear if it gets to a dangerous level in here. So you want to have one of these, even if you're not using propane, even if you're not using any kind of heat, cooking, fuel, yada, yada, yada. You don't know if the person at camp next to you has faulty exhaust, if they're running their generator too close to your site. It's just good peace of mind to have this. I normally try to keep it kind of at head level wherever I have it set. Normally it'll be on like one of the shelves in the back there, since that's where my head is normally. Moving on. Next 2 must-haves I've included in my safety kit before, but they are worth mentioning again because, like I said, even if you're not car camping or traveling, anytime you're in your vehicle, especially if you're alone, I think these 2 items are hands down essentials for safety and preparedness. 1, you're going to want an air compressor so that you can air up or down your tires. Primarily if you get a low, if you're get the little gauge saying your tires are low, you want to have a gauge so that you can check the pressure, and then you want to have that compressor so that you can air them back up if you need to. If you're going to be going on like a more gravelly or sandy dirt type road, you might want to air them down a little. I'm sorry, my voice is still not recovered yet. But anywho, air compressor, number one. Number two is having a jump starter. You want something that does not, now jumper cables are good to have, definitely as a backup, but you want to be able to independently jumpstart your vehicle if you're out somewhere by yourself and it doesn't start and it's the battery. That way you don't need to wait for somebody to come along. You don't need to call anybody. You can just get it cranked back up, charged back up, and on the road by yourself in no time. Lifesaver. The other thing I want to talk about as a safety tool that I think everybody should have, especially if you're traveling off-grid, especially if you're solo, and especially, again, if you're somewhere where there is not reliable cell service. You're going to want one of these satellite emergency devices. Not only because this one allows you to link to your phone and send text messages even when there's no cell service through satellite, depending on the plan you have, depends on how many you get, or if you have to pay per text. So look into that on your own. Most of them are subscription based. You can do ones where you can stop and start when you want. You can do some with, a certain amount of text messages already built in. So that way you can check in. If you know you're going to be off grid and not have service, you can still check in with your loved ones to let them know when you're safe at camp. But most importantly, you have this SOS feature that you ideally never need to activate. But when you do, so if you are one that solo hikes like me, like I was thinking when I was hiking down to the base of Soko Falls and it was super muddy and slippery, I just kept picturing in my head, oh my God, Heather, you're the only person around. Do not wipe out. Do not break your ankle. But these are the times when this is clutch, because if you do need rescuing, knock on wood, worst happens, you're able to call for help if you need it. And they can use your GPS coordinates if you're lost as well. So you definitely want to look into having one of these. Now, if you're never without cell service and you're always in range, it might not be as useful for you. Otherwise, definitely something you want to look into if you're solo. Let's switch gears from items to essential tips again for a minute. There's a couple of things that I want to mention, especially that are in the forefront of my mind lately, given everything I've been going through. I think it's always important, if you're in an area that you're not familiar with, to know where the closest emergency services are, whether it's fire and EMT, whether it's the closest hospital or emergency room. I think it's very important that you know if something terrible happens and you need medical assistance immediately, where would you go? I mean, obviously there's always the option to dial 911, but if you need to seek emergency medical help, you kind of want to know where your closest facility is going to be. In that same vein, I just recently, because of a few tips from my viewers, have added this to my safety kit, and that is, well, I already had emergency information programmed in my phone. If for some reason my phone is inaccessible, damaged, dead, whatever the case may be, I have a little card for ice in case of emergency that can go, it can go right up here in your visor. It can go, if you've got a little compartment down here in your glove box, somewhere where it's easy to access, easy to be found if you are unresponsive in an emergency. That way people know who's most important to get a hold of, if there's any specific doctors whose care you're under for a specific condition, anything that's super pertinent or important in an emergency situation. Make sure if you have pets and you want to know, call so-and-so, to take dogs, something along those lines. Just any kind of emergency info you want easily accessible, make sure you have that ready to go somewhere within reach. I'm going to stick with the medical while we're on topic. I've got my little notes here so I don't forget any of them. I've got all 20. Two things that I think are important to look into if you especially are somebody that has chronic illness, somebody that has a condition, or specific, something that requires, like if you're a diabetic that requires medication or anything like that, to have a medical bracelet. And also to look into that Life 360 app. There's different options, like where you have the necklace you can wear with the little emergency button. That way, if you are an emergency, you can't access your phone, you're not able to call for help otherwise, you can just kind of hit that button and no help will be on the way or try to contact you. So those, I think, are very important in being prepared, especially if you are by yourself a lot. See here behind me, I have my headlamp. I think it's very important to have at least one headlamp, even better if it's rechargeable. Bonus points if you have a backup. And I think it's a good idea to keep it either on your driver's headrest or passenger headrest. That way, no matter where you are in the vehicle, it's in the same spot all the time, easy to grab on your way out the door, so that if you need to exit your vehicle in the dark, you're prepared. I also have LED rechargeable little emergency flasher lights that are magnetic. They USB-C recharge, and then they also a couple of them take batteries. I do not feel like digging them out of my emergency garage and back, but I've shown those to you before. I always keep those emergency lights charged and in my kit, and I always keep my trusty solar lanterns charged for if I need some emergency light and for whatever reason my other lights are dead or I can't get to my USB light right away. One thing that people might not consider a safety essential, but I absolutely do, is to make sure you have ample snacks and water on hand. Even if you think you're just doing a day trip, you're going to eat something when you get to where you're going, you don't really want to deal with bringing food or drinks or anything with you, at least have sufficient water for emergencies and at least have some snacks to sustain yourself if you get stuck somewhere, delayed somewhere, lost, rerouted, find yourself ending up somewhere an extra day you weren't planning on. Make sure you have at least enough snacks and provisions and water to get you through that type of a situation. We are really zooming through. We only have 4 to go. That means I've given you 16 safety essentials so far. So let's get into 17. And that is probably pretty self-explanatory, probably nothing earth-shattering that you haven't already considered. But I like to have one up front, and then one in the back. And I also have a little travel kit that I keep in my hiking backpack when I bring my hiking backpack with me. But that is a first aid kit for first aid purposes. I am a klutz. I am constantly running into things, scratching myself, stubbing my toe, getting blisters, you name it. I always need Band-Aids. I always need ointment. I always need first aid at some point or another. So make sure you have ample first aid, whatever that is for you, whatever suits your needs. Make sure you have it and make sure it's easily accessible. BRB, I was getting my go bag ready and I just realized I brought something inside I wanted to talk about. And that's rule number 1. You should always have it with you when you're out here. So, be right back. Okay, I brought my Percy purse inside to make sure it was stocked up, and that's where my tool is that we were going to talk about next. So, I'm back. The next thing you're going to want is one of these babies, and it is a multi-tool. You can cut your seatbelt with it. You can bust out your window or your windshield, your glass with it. And it also has a knife, which I don't need to show you. But anyways, you want to have that up here with you, because if you need to cut your seatbelt, chances are you need to be, within reach of where you are in your seatbelt. So, pro tip. And that, my friends, brings us to 19 and 20, and both I know you guessed it already, have to do with bears, of course. No, but I did want to make sure that I mentioned this as one of the biggest safety essentials. Now, of course, this depends on where you primarily do your traveling and camping, but I will say 40 of the 50 United States have bears. So, if you are camping in an area that has bears, if you are traveling, eating, day tripping, hiking, you get it, in bear territory, black bear or grizzly, especially grizzly, but regardless, you need to be bear aware. That means you do not leave garbage, you do not leave food behind, you make sure any food that is not immediately on you, being used, or, about to be used is safe and secure and not easily accessible for bears. I do actually plan on doing a whole video on how to be bear aware and how to camp in bear territory, some safety tips to kind of put your minds at ease, proper bear etiquette, all that stuff. So if that is something you're interested in, let me know below. But for now, I just want to mention that it is very, very, very important to be bear aware. It's not only for your safety, even if the black bear seems perfectly harmless this time, any type of human habituation, any type of association with humans and food, it might not pose a safety risk to you that time, but it may pose a safety risk to the family that comes behind you. Same thing with keeping a clean camp. If you leave trash, if you leave food in the fire pit when you leave, if you leave scented items behind, you might be fine. But do you really want to be responsible for the people that come along behind you that end up bearing the brunt, no pun intended, of those actions? Probably not. So, always be bear aware. And that brings me to my last tip, and that's bear spray. While controversial, and while you may get plenty of people that say there are other protection methods that are preferred, it is a proven fact that bear spray is the best deterrent against bear attacks. So, that in mind, it's not just bears that are deterred by bear spray. You give mountain lion a good old spray in the face, it's going to reroute them too. Wild boars, bear spray. But in general, if you are hiking in bear territory, especially alone, really you want to have a canister per person in your group. And ideally, if you're hiking in especially grizzly territory, it's best to have 3, 4, or more people in your group. But if you are hiking alone, if you're in grizzly territory, especially in the backcountry, it's advisable to have 2 canisters. That way, if you have to deploy one, you still have a backup just in case on your way back to safety. Otherwise, 1 canister of bear spray, know how to use it, watch videos. Maybe one day I'll go really crazy and do a demo for you guys when it's time for me to get a new can. But in all seriousness, make sure you have it in easy grip. If you're hiking in bear territory and your visibility is not great, have it right there in your hand. If you're at camp, making dinner, doing things, getting set up, you want to kind of maybe have it clipped to you so that you can access it very easily, just in case a bear wanders into your camp. It doesn't do you any good if it's in the car and then the bear's between you and the car. So anyways, that is it as far as bears. That is it as far as my 20 safety essentials. I am now officially out of breath because talking has been quite a chore so far this week. If you found this video helpful, though, I would really love it if you would leave a like behind and let me know if I left any safety essentials off that you never leave without or that you recommend. Make sure that you leave those in the comments. And I will see you again very soon. Bye.